right. Welcome, welcome. So excited to be here today. We are coming back to talk with Etel. Etel like Kettle. Thank you so much for being here. Really excited about this topic today. I know we've kind of had a few different things we've touched on with the connection between our mental and physical well-being, which has been awesome. So today we're going to kind of hone in on hormone balance and some different things that affect that and what we can start to do to feel better. And even though, maybe our levels look quote unquote normal, but how can we feel our best and function at our best? So, Edel, will you share with us a little bit of what your journey has looked like, what you've learned along the way?
Well, first off, when is the last one that we did? I feel like it's been forever,
I think it was like
right?
February. Yeah, it was a couple months. Yeah.
It's been several months. Oh my goodness, I can't even think of the last one. But anyway, I mean, most of us as moms, as just human beings, we just we go through different things of stress, like different ways of stressing out and it can show in different ways, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're under stress. I know that when I have like really big events that I have to do, whether it's like my daughter, she's about to graduate, so I have to plan this thing out for her and her friends. I don't feel stressed, but now I recognize that there is a level of stress in me. So it just kind of changes like even like my heart rate, different things. So
Hmm.
the thing is that it never really, it didn't dawn on me for a while how much, impact stress has on your hormonal system. And I'm just going to dive into that because I feel like that's going to be a huge topic that we're going to cover right now, hormones and how stress levels can impact your hormones, your mindset. Um, and so when you're under a lot of stress that you don't even know, it just causes like this chronic stress in you. And it's kind of like a cascade of different symptoms that just start to happen slowly but surely. You'll start to experience cortisol. You'll start to experience fatigue and just headaches. There's like different ways that it all comes and impacts your body. I mean, even like I said, your adrenaline, you'll see that your heart rate increases. And I'd noticed that a lot when when I feel like I'm under pressure. I'm checking my heart rate and I'm like, wow, it's, at like right now, literally, typically my heart rate's at around 67, like it's very, very low. And right now it's at 91, which isn't high, right? It isn't, but it just goes to show you that it, it just, sometimes you just don't even know that it's happening to you. And a funny story,
Kind of
because I
sneaky.
have to go into this because I need everybody that's listening to this. I want them to know and I want it to be recorded what happened to me today because I could have been really stressed out about it, but I kind of laughed it off. And I posted it on my stories on Instagram. So I was walking down the stairs talking to my daughter. She's downstairs waiting for me to take her to work. And midway, I'm we just put new stairs on here in our house. We just put new stairs inside our house. So they're not what we're accustomed to, but I'm walking and I'm telling you the stairs were after me today. Like I feel like they came at me today. I feel like it's their fault, not mine. I sl I slipped down. I'm not even joking. I fell on my butt. I fell on my butt, my left side. So luckily, I didn't fall right on my bone, like my tailbone, because I
Okay.
already have a previous injury. This is how much of a I'm so clumsy. I fell on my left side and my left hand, like my hands, bruised. But long story short, I fell on the ground and I'm just like sitting there and you know, you just can't help but laugh. My daughter, I know she wanted to laugh. It wasn't until after the fact I'm like, you wanted to laugh. She's like, yeah, but I felt bad because it looked like it really hurt. She's like, and you had your eyes closed while you were going down. So I was like, okay. But anyway, I'm saying all that because, like I said,
Yeah.
stress comes in different ways. In different, sometimes it's like
Yeah.
you're doing good. Next thing you know, you're sideswiped and something just comes out of nowhere and then your stress levels just go up high. So um,
Yeah.
I don't even know where I'm going with this story, but you know, I
Yeah.
just had to share it.
I think that's a great example. I literally was talking to a client earlier today, and she goes, I didn't know how bad I felt until I started feeling better. And I think, especially like you said, as busy moms and women, we are just juggling a lot. And I think we often are just kind of pushing ourselves through every day. It's busy, go, 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 and we don't realize where that stress or tension is showing up. And like you said, it can be so sneaky sometimes. And because it's just sort of part of life, life happens. We trip, we fall, this happens, that happens, we can't find a parking space, we have a flat tire, whatever, fill in the blank, the kids, whatever happens, right? And so because it becomes so frequent and normal that these things are happening, we start to not recognize the signs that our nervous system is in a heightened state, which that's normal that response happens, but because we're not noticing it, and we're just go to the next thing, put out the next fire, put out the next fire, that we don't realize how much our nervous system, that cortisol and adrenaline, norepinephrine, which are useful, we have to regulate that. And we don't realize that that's happening because it's happening probably too frequently, maybe. And then we're just used to it. We don't regulate it. And that's when we start seeing it's going to impact. Cortisol pulls calcium from our bones and decreases our estrogen progesterone balance. It impacts the thyroid directly. It majorly impacts our insulin cycle and our ability to actually use food as fuel versus storing it as fat. We're going to
Yep.
store more fat when we're in that height state, right? So
Yep.
all of those factors can be going on, but you might not quote unquote feel it. You might be like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. You'll be fine for a while. And then one day, and so many of the clients that I work with, that is the story. And myself, I was struggling with that as well years ago and didn't really realize it until I started learning more and like, whoa, okay, I didn't realize how interconnected this is. So that's a great example of how that, those daily stress and the things that happen, life happens. Life is going to keep happening. So
Yeah.
what can we do? We just have to start learning to recognize those signs a little earlier. Whether is it that our heart rate is up a little bit? Is it headaches? Is it just kind
Yeah.
of like sore, achy, things, or the feet hurting, or, there's these kind of random little signs sometimes. Sometimes it shows up as of like a rash or an eczema or something like that. Some people get actual hives, but it really varies depending. Some people it just shows up as like gut issues too, because the inflammation is going to go somewhere. It's just, everyone will be different. I kind of joke, it's like our body's like, okay, this is a lot, life is happening, there's all this stress, whatever. And the body's like, we can only handle so much right now. Send it to storage, put it in the garage. Whereas
Yep.
everyone has a different garage somewhere,
Yep.
a different place, right? So it's gonna show up differently. But eventually that inflammation gets to the point where it gets more and more and more, especially as our cells are getting older. Unfortunately, we don't really get younger, but um, and it can progress into more significant, issues as time goes on. So what have you learned that has kind of helped along the way?
Um, so I do want to say that all the things that you touched on, whether it's your cortisol issues, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, the insulin, like it definitely raises your blood sugar, so it increases the insulin. So there's like so many different things that we don't realize stress impacts. And I'm a prime example that it's not until you actually go get checked by a hormonal therapist when they're like, oh, you're low on progesterone, you're low on testosterone, estrogen. Um, and then you're like, wow, I didn't even realize that's what was happening. Or we see the little lower belly bloat and we're like, what is going on here? Um, and like you said, you're just impacted in different ways. Even some people experience PMS or things, during their cycle that they don't realize. And especially when your body is undergoing like pain, if you have a lot of discomfort throughout your cycles, that can also raise your stress levels, which people don't even realize. They just chalk it off as it's part of life, right? This is part of a cycle. You have to go through the pain, which
Mhm.
in theory, you do not have to. There are ways to alleviate that. So I
Right.
will say some of the things that I have done to like alleviate stress and support my hormones is sleep is a non-negotiable. Uh,
Yeah.
and especially at my age, a female actually should get at least between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And it's because it helps to restore your hormonal balance and it lowers your cortisol. And if you're up late at night and you're waking up at 5 in the morning, what good is that going to do you? I remember those days when I was only sleeping 3 hours a day. And it was, now it's just odd to me. Like I can't even imagine myself only sleeping 3 hours, 4 hours a day. It's
Yeah.
rough. So sleep is a non-negotiable. Exercise is definitely a non-negotiable for me. I'm in the gym 6 days a week. And so when you're over a certain age, like for me, I am over 45. So
Yeah.
that's something that's super important to me to have that daily because it's just a lifestyle. I have grown to love this, and when it's not a part of my day, it just like completely throws me off. So then it causes this form of stress, like because I'm not doing what I typically do to like de-stress, reset, refocus. Um, doing lots of like breathing exercises, journaling, reading my Bible. I have some cool books that I'm reading right now. Those are really good stress relievers as well. And, nutrition, another thing, because you get to balance your sugars, you're taking in your proteins, your fats, your carbs, your fibers. So you're making sure that your nutrition is on point. That helps too.
Mhm.
And I will say, I think so, and I wrote them down because I wanted to make sure that I hit on every single one. Supplementation is a big thing.
Mhm.
Making sure that I'm taking adaptogens, so adaptogenic
Mhm.
supplements. And never did I think that that would help me as much as it has until last year
Mhm.
when I realized the shift that my body made once I started incorporating stuff like the reishi, the shiitake mushrooms, all of those mushrooms, the ones that help you with your brain function, just your health, the inflammation that cortisol caused in my body, the stuff that was making my cortisol's all over the place, like my hormones go all over the place. So making sure that I have that and my vitamin B, like my BCAAs, I'm taking branched chain amino acids every single day. So there's things that I feel like every single thing I have named off is a non-negotiable for me because it's so important. It's so important. And I tell people when you're young and you're already having babies, you better start. This is the time. That's the time to start doing this, not when you're in your 40s.
Mhm.
And I mean, because not that that's too late, but kudos to you if you can start off sooner when you're super young. And I think the last thing for me would be probably connection and boundaries. So making sure that the people that I do connect with are people that I align with
Yeah.
and that I set boundaries in any setting, in any social setting, in any conversation that I'm in, making sure that I've set those boundaries so that I don't overload myself with stress and so that my hormones can heal, my body can heal still.
Mhm.
Because if you are around people that are just extremely toxic, just the environment, the way they speak, the way they carry themselves, it does impact you. Whether people want to admit it or not,
Yep.
because I mean, and I don't know if you've ever seen those videos where they put a nasty strawberry with like these really nice plump strawberries. They put the nasty one in there and then each of them starts to get like all gross and yucky. They start to form all this mold. And I
Yep.
mean, sounds very appetizing, right? But that's kind of like what happens with us. It's if you're in an environment that's not good for you, it just messes with all the work. And see, that's for me, like, I think about how far I've come. I don't want to go back to any of that
Right. Right.
in any way, shape, or form. So those
Yeah.
are just some of the things or several things that I do to
Yeah.
help me, with hormone stuff.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's amazing. And I love that you mentioned that healthy connection, boundary piece of it too, because there's literally one study I saw, probably multiple studies now at this point, on people they had groups of people in different rooms or whatever, and they eliminated all the variables and whatnot, and then they had someone else walk in the room with different kind of emotions going on, like someone who was frustrated, someone who was angry, someone who was happy, someone who was whatever, right? And then they actually measured the impact it had on everyone in the room. And they have measured brain waves, they measured stress hormones, and I think there was something else. But anyways, there was, without like that new person who came into that space with all the people that were there, um they didn't say anything. They didn't do anything or say anything. They just walked in the room, and there was a significant change in the people's brain waves and the neurotransmitters, the hormones, and everything. I mean, and so it's legitimately a whole science. So I think what we're going to do next time is we're going to actually go a little bit more into that, a little bit on the science of, and so what that is called, that's called biofrequency science of what's happening on a more molecular level in our brains and our bodies with these hormones, with these neurotransmitters, with these brain waves. And there's actually some really helpful things you can do to support that. So we'll go into that next time a little bit. Some of those things are like those adaptogens. If you can support what's going on with those little cells in the body to support repair, like you said, with the adaptogens, and balancing out those biofrequencies with the nervous system. Like you said, of course, the stress relief is going to be really important too, and the deep breathing. So we'll go more into those things a little bit. That is tremendous. That makes a world of difference. So I hope that this is helpful for you guys today. The last thing I want to kind of touch on here before we have to go is, would you share a little bit of like when you started realizing, what were those signs that were the little red flags that popped up, that you started realizing, okay, I've got to make some shifts. I've got to figure out some ways to balance these hormones more. And I know some people, like we said, it can show up as headaches or brain fog or whatever. Would you share a little bit of, like, for you, what were some of those signs, and what have you learned about recognizing those signs, so that as those who are listening can know, like, okay, there's some things that are going on, maybe I need to look into some different ways to support.
Yeah, so and I probably should have led with that just because I think the way my body reacted, it was probably because of all the years that I ignored everything. Everything was just very intense
Yeah.
symptoms. So it was all very heightened. So for me, for example, I was getting these just insane anxiety attacks, which anxiety is, which we sometimes kind of like say anxiety is because of the stress we're under or the environment that we're in. Although, yes, that does have something to do with it, but sometimes it is hormone related. Your body will kind of react that way because of your hormones and the way your body's feeling and things like that. But the anxiety was pretty bad. I was I just felt really crummy. Although throughout my day, I was still able to function. So I was able to go to the gym. I was able to clean and cook and do everything. I was still very like super positive throughout my day, you know? But I just I knew that there was something wrong. Um, and I'm trying to think of all the ways, but even like my skin, when I
Mhm.
that was like the one of the toughest things for me was my skin. And I know, and I think I said this on a podcast before, but I
Yeah.
think because I wasn't used to my face looking that way. I had this crazy stuff happening to my skin. And I feel like it is a ripple effect, right? When your hormones are everywhere, when your gut's acting all funky, when the cortisol is acting up, your body's going to show you. Your body's going to tell you when something's happening.
Yeah.
And so it was like my skin. It was just the way that I felt. It was, I mean, I'm trying to think of all of the stuff. Like, but when I tell you that it has just, if you were to name it off, I'd be like, oh yeah, I experienced that. Or oh, yeah, definitely that. Like it was just,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my body experienced everything, but it was super intense. And especially, like I said, because I did wait a while and to finally do something about it. And I originally was trying to fix it with synthetic hormones,
Mm-hmm.
which some of us do need to. Like I will never, I'm not a doctor, right? So I can't cure nor diagnose anybody.
Right.
Um, I did go that route, and yes, it did work. I'm not going to say it did not. Like it did work for the most part to fix the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So on paper, when she checked my levels and everything, she's like, okay, this one's good. You know, your progesterone's at a good whatever, a good level. Um, but it wasn't getting to the root of the problem because I still felt like something was wrong. Even after the fact, I was still, having like just different neurological things going on, and I had to go get like all kinds of testings on CTs and brain scans and
Yeah.
just lots of different things. And but I wish I could tell people that there was specific things that I went through, but there's probably not one thing that you can't mention to me that I didn't experience. And I tell people all the time, it comes in different ways. Like really, like sometimes you don't even notice that you are going through hormonal changes. And some people get really emotional, some people get really angry. So your emotions might show it
Yeah.
and you don't even realize it. Um, you know, like so, and again, like it's different for everybody, but I will say for me, my mental state, my physical state, every state, every state, I feel like was somehow like I feel like my body, because I waited so long, it went through probably every type of symptom that
Right.
screams help your hormones. So,
So don't ignore the little things. That's the
yes.
moral of the story here.
Moral of the story, don't
Yeah.
ignore it.
Yeah. Even the what is considered normal with like being scatterbrained, I used to walk
Yes.
home and do like 10, 15 other things. And I just thought, well, I'm a mom, I don't get enough sleep, and also I have ADD. So I was like, that's just normal, right? Well, actually, that's gone away. Where I might do one or two other little things, but I don't leave the room and forget why I was there. I
Yeah.
remember why I was there. I do it like 99.9% of the time. I don't even have to keep lists anymore. I used to have to do lists upon lists upon lists because the brain, like fog, fatigue, and scatterbrain scenario was so much. And yes, I took all the vitamins and all the water and exercise and healthy things. So we're here to tell you that those little things are a sign to start asking questions, to start learning. Reach out to us, connect with us. We're happy to share our stories, happy to support you, encourage you wherever you're at, and help you learn some of these tools and things that can really make a huge difference in
Yeah.
you actually functioning at your best. There's a difference between functioning and surviving and actually feeling your best. So that's
Yeah.
what we want for you.
Yeah. And that's one thing I will encourage. And, I am so glad that we're continuing these types of conversations. And I can't wait for our next one because I do feel like there is a fine line when it comes to what we can do for ourselves. But there's also, I do feel like there is a higher power. And I do feel like God has created things for us to be able to utilize different tools, different, you know, plants that he created for us to use. So I cannot wait to dive into that. I cannot wait to dive into like, God creating sound and just different things. And trust me, you all, you're not going to want to miss this. But thank you, Miriam, for like, I am so glad that we're doing this again. And I cannot wait for the next one.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I love that you brought that up because as we've kind of touched on with some of our other ones that we did, it's not just physical, right? It is mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual. We are not a puzzle with all these pieces all over the place. We shouldn't be. If you are, then we need to
Right.
reflect. That's what these conversations are really about, is that we want to help you bring the pieces together and find those tools, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, that are going to really help you function at your best
Yeah.
and be a whole person that can fulfill your full potential, whether that's just serving your family or in your career as an entrepreneur, whatever it is that you do. That's the whole point. That's the goal. So
Yep.
awesome. Okay, well, thanks for being here, and we look forward
Yeah.
to next time.
Yes, ma'am.